I'm joined by John Malcomb. He is a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank here in Washington, D.C., and by David Chipman. He is a consultant for Mayors Against Illegal Guns and a former special agent from the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. Gentlemen, let's start with where he went. He went to the heartland of the United States. If there's ever a hunting country, it's in Minnesota. I mean, that's where people spend a lot of time fishing and hunting. He took it right to the heart of where people are gun owners. The significance of this, and I'll start with you, David.
Well, I think the significance is he picked a city where gun laws had made a difference. He started out his conversation by talking about significant reductions in violence when police got together, worked on preventative strategies, and enforced the laws on the books.
John?
Well, he certainly picked a city where there have been some successes by the police. It's also where his ATF director nominee is from. He also picked a city, by the way, that has demonstrated that it has a lot of problems with its background check system. There have been a series of articles by the Minneapolis Star-Tribune pointing out that dozens of people in Minnesota who've been adjudicated mentally ill have nonetheless passed background checks.
This does seem like a full court press, though. Last night, over 100 million people watching television, and there's the Sandy Hook Elementary chorus, Jennifer Hudson obviously tugging at the heartstrings. There was a commercial during that about gun control measures. What do you think about this campaign that seems to be underway? The NRA has always been very strong in their campaigns. It seems like the other side of this issue is now coming out just as forcefully. Would you agree?
Well, I'm not a member of the NRA, and I certainly think that there are passionate advocates on both sides of this issue. Look, nobody wants to have a repeat of the horrific events that happened in Newtown. I mean, if it didn't tug at your heartstrings, then you don't have a heart. The question becomes, what are we going to do about it? And are we going to come up with something that makes us feel good but is ultimately not effective? Or are we going to come up with solutions that actually have a chance of working and that will also be legal?
I want to get your thoughts, and then I'm going to piggyback off what you just said.
Yeah, I like what John said. No one wants to do anything that isn't meaningful. Unfortunately, for the last couple of decades, when I was a special agent, we focused almost entirely on apprehension of bad guys who already had guns. A person like me would suit up in a bulletproof vest, kick down a door, and try not to get my head blown off by someone who already had a gun. What I like today is we're really focusing on meaningful things that we can do as a country that balance freedoms, but also prevent bad guys from ever getting a gun in the first place.
There's the interesting thing, kind of to get at the heart of what you were saying, after 9/11 in this country, I mean, I can't go into an airport and keep my jacket on. I can't keep my shoes on. It seems like there are people who are willing to make significant sacrifices for the total. And yet when it comes to gun owners, we hear a lot of people saying, nope, I'm not in favor of this or that. And we look around the world. I mean, in Australia, there was the Port Arthur massacre. Right after that, there was a gun buyback program. Strict gun control measures went into place. They haven't had a repeat of that. We saw stories this weekend in the Washington Post, the UK, same sort of thing. Why isn't the United States willing to take strong, decisive action?
Well, I don't think that that's true. First of all, buying a gun.
Well, it is true what happened in Australia. It's the truth, and that's the truth.
True. But look, if strict gun control by itself was the answer, then countries like Russia and Brazil and Mexico that have much stricter gun control laws than we do would be safer places to be. Instead, they're more violent. If strict gun control was the answer, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Illinois, Oakland, California, New York City would be among the safest places in this country to be. Instead, they are among the most dangerous places. So, you know, am I saying that there isn't a role somehow for gun control? Of course there is. In fact, guns are already one of the most heavily regulated products that are sold in this country. But gun control by itself is certainly not the answer.
David?
Well, first of all, guns aren't a product that are regulated at all. Actually, they're purposely left out and not regulated like other products. Two, just on the issue of background checks, as you pointed out, the 9/11 analogy. Currently today, our gun background check system is similar to allowing 40% of gun buyers to walk directly on a plane without even going through screening. You know, right now, I think where everyone's talking about background checks, I think that's a solid place to start, and we have to do it today. Already over 1,000 people have been killed with guns since Newtown, and this toll will keep going day after day. 33 Americans murdered every day with a gun until we do something.
Can I respond to that?
Just go ahead.
First of all, guns are very heavily regulated. There are all kinds of categories of people, including convicted felons, people who have been convicted of domestic violence offenses, people who have been adjudicated mentally ill, who are not allowed to buy guns. all federally licensed firearms dealers have to engage in background checks, whether they sell out of a store or whether they sell out of a gun at a gun show. This 40% figure is very old data and was exaggerated even at the time that it wasn't stale, which was back in 1994, by the way, before the Brady handgun law went into effect. And with respect to the current background check system, there are all kinds of flaws with that system, with dramatic underreporting of records by the majority of states in this country.
David smiling.
The problem, Mike, is that we know that criminals, 80% of them, go outside of a licensed gun dealer. They go on the internet to websites like Arms List and buy any gun they want without a background check. Sometimes they go to gun shows. Other times they go into a newspaper and meet someone in the parking lot of McDonald's. It is not a highly regulated commodity. I can't go and buy cold medicine all over the internet. You know, I can't. I have to go to a store and show ID. So there is no universal regulations, and that's what needs to happen first.
And John, he makes a good point. I mean, if I want to drive a car here in the United States, I got to have a license. I got to take a test. It seems like there are regulations there, and yet, you know, if I want to go to a gun show, I can probably figure out a way to get a gun.
Well, look, there are 350 million guns in this country, and a lot that are imported illegally. If somebody is hell-bent on getting a gun, they can. The fact of the matter is it is already a felony for a person to engage in regular business of transacting firearms without a license. It is already a felony to sell a gun to somebody whom you know or should know is a prohibited buyer. These are laws at ATF and other federal agencies and state and local agencies that are on the books that can be, be investigated and prosecuted. If they're not being zealously prosecuted, shame on them.
Let me ask one final question. What do you think is going to happen in this Congress in terms of legislation? And I'll start with you, David.
I think we're going to have a background check required for every gun sale in America, and I think it's going to be the most meaningful legislation that has been passed on guns since 1968.
John?
I don't know. My crystal ball broke yesterday, so I can't make a prediction. I do know that a problem with universal background checks is the only way that you can enforce it is if you know who has what guns, and the only way you can do that is through a national registry, and that's very problematic.
What do you think, though, in terms of legislation? You don't think anything's going to come out of this, or do you
look,
think?
There's a lot that can be done. I applaud the president, for instance, for raising the issue of mental illness. The vast majority of these mass shooter events have involved people who are severely mentally ill, usually schizophrenic, who are being untreated. That is a real problem, and I'm glad the president has addressed it, and I think that something will be done.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Both of you, thanks so much for coming in and talking to us tonight. Certainly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, Mike.